When a woman lives her life anchored in purpose, not people, everything about her shifts. There's a quiet authority that comes from knowing who you are and why you're here. It's not loud. It's not attention seeking. In fact, it doesn't need an audience at all. Purpose-centered living is magnetic because it doesn't chase. It attracts. She isn't waiting for someone to give her life meaning. She's already living with meaning. And that alone changes the dynamic. The mistake many people make, especially in relationships, is outsourcing their identity. They wait for affirmation, attention, or affection to tell them who they are. But a woman who's grounded in purpose doesn't look outward for internal validation. She's not swayed by temporary praise or panicked by silence. Why? Because her identity isn't up for negotiation. Her time, energy, and focus are already invested in something bigger than approval. And that's where the chase begins, on his end. Because here's what happens when a man encounters a woman who's deeply rooted in something beyond him. He instinctively leans in, not because she's trying to impress him, not because she's playing hard to get, but because her sense of self creates an emotional gravity. She isn't performing, she's aligned. Her life doesn't pause when he enters the picture. She keeps moving, and he has to catch up. That dynamic, her in motion, him adjusting to keep pace, flips the script entirely. Now, let's be clear, this isn't about pretending not to care. It's not about being cold or emotionally unavailable. In fact, a purposeful woman can be warm, generous, and loving, but she never abandons herself in the process. She gives from overflow, not from depletion. That's the difference. Her relationships don't define her. They reflect her. And when a man sees that, really sees it, he realizes he's dealing with someone who can't be swayed by flattery or pressure. He understands she's operating from a standard, not a script. So if you want him to chase, stop trying to impress and start aligning with your values. Ask yourself, what am I here to build? What I stand for? What would I pursue even if no one clapped? Less impossible. Because when you start walking in that direction, the right people don't need to be convinced. They'll recognize the direction, the confidence, the wholeness, and they'll want to be a part of it, not out of obligation, but because it's rare. And rare is unforgettable. So no, she doesn't chase. She leads, she builds, she creates. And in doing so, she becomes the kind of woman who doesn't need to be pursued because she's already chosen herself. That's when the right man realizes if he doesn't pursue her, he'll be left behind. Confidence without arrogance. Now that's a powerful blend. And it's a defining quality of the kind of woman who doesn't chase. She doesn't need to. Why? Because she carries herself with a presence that tells the world, I know who I am, and I'm not looking for permission to be her. You see, confidence isn't about being the loudest person in the room or dominating every conversation. It's quieter than that, more composed. It's in the way she holds eye contact without flinching, the way she walks into a room and doesn't shrink, the way she speaks when has something meaningful to say, not to fill silence, but to add substance. Men notice this. People notice this. Because authentic confidence is rare and it doesn't scream, it resonates. What makes this so magnetic is that it's not performative. She's not putting on a show to win someone over. She's not trying to be chosen. She already chosen herself. That's what makes him chase. Because here's the paradox. The woman who doesn't need external validation is often the one who receives it the most. Not because she begs for it, but because people are drawn to certainty. Especially men. When a man senses a woman is confident in her skin, it disrupts the usual power dynamic. She isn't auditioning. She isn't trying to prove her worth. She just is. And that presence, it challenges him to rise, to meet her at her level, to be someone worthy of access, not just attention. And this confidence isn't rooted in appearance. It's anchored in identity. That's the key distinction. Anyone can look put together, but confidence that lasts, that comes from within. It's built in silence and solitude. In those moments when no one's watching, but she still shows up for herself. That's where the foundation is laid. You can tell when a woman has done that work. She makes decisions without needing a chorus of approval. She can enjoy her own company. She can set boundaries without guilt. That inner clarity gives her an unmistakable edge, not because she's trying to be better than anyone else, but because she's no longer trying to be someone she's not. And that's exactly what draws him in. Because deep down, most men don't want to lead a woman who can't stand on her own. They want to walk beside a woman who's already standing tall. So if you're trying to be chased, the answer isn't in the chase at all. It's in the posture. in the poise, in the decision to be so grounded in who you are that you no longer seek to be found. Because the moment you stop proving your worth and start embodying it, that's when the real pursuit begins. The right man will see it, and he won't want to let it go. There's something captivating about a woman who walks into a room and immediately commands attention without demanding it. She doesn't have to speak loudly, dress extravagantly, or dominate the conversation. It's her posture, her poise, the way she carries herself with self-assurance and grace. That kind of presence isn't built overnight. It's cultivated. And it's this cultivated confidence, quiet, grounded, and unshakable, that keeps a man hooked without her ever needing to say a word. Mature women understand this truth intuitively. They know that true confidence isn't arrogance. It's not about proving your worth to anyone. It's about you knowing your worth so deeply that you don't need external validation to feel seen. And when a woman lives from that place, her energy shifts. She becomes magnetic, not because she's trying to impress, but because she's centered. Men pick up on this energy immediately, even if they can't articulate why they feel drawn in. Confidence, when it's genuine, allows a woman to be fully present in her own skin. She doesn't chase attention. She attracts it. She doesn't compete with others. She collaborates, supports, and uplifts. That internal security gives her the freedom to connect with others authentically, not from a place of fear or insecurity, but from a place of fullness. She doesn't need a man to complete her, which ironically makes her the kind of woman a man wants to pursue. It's also important to recognize that mature confidence has been earned through experience. It's not performative. It's based on youth, perfection, or approval. It's built on scars, resilience, and the self-respect that comes from having faced life head on and grown stronger from it. That's why it's so deeply attractive. It says, I've done the work. I know who I am. I don't need to explain myself to be understood. And that understanding of self, of worth, of boundaries is a form of emotional intelligence that doesn't just draw people in. It anchors them, because when a woman has mastered the art of showing up for herself, others instinctively trust that she won't disappear into their expectations. She won't shrink to make them comfortable or stretch herself to be accepted. She brings her full self into the space. And that authenticity is rare and it's irresistible. We live in a world where so many people are chasing something: attention, perfection, love, validation. But the woman who's no longer chasing because she's already found peace within, she becomes the one worth catching. And not because of anything she says or does in a calculated way, but simply because of how she is. That's the kind of confidence that doesn't inspire. It lingers. In a world full of noise, that quiet certainty becomes the loudest thing in the room. There's a subtle power in stillness, and mature women know to use it. They've outgrown the need to over-explain themselves, to fill silences with words, or to overshare their emotions for the sake of being understood. Instead, they have learned the value of restraint, not as a tactic to manipulate, but as a sign of emotional control and self-awareness. When a woman can be fully present without overreacting, when she can respond rather than react, it sends a clear messaging she is anchored. And that calm presence can be both captivating and disarming. You see, most people are addicted to emotional volatility. We're trained by culture to think that constant engagement, fast responses, and dramatic expressions mean that someone cares or is alive. But what actually stands out, what actually commands respect, is the woman who knows how to pause. She knows that not every question requires an answer. Not every conflict requires her energy, and not every emotion needs to be externalized. That's not suppression, it's discipline. And that discipline is magnetic. Men especially notice this. A woman who doesn't let herself be pulled into petty arguments or emotional traps signals maturity. It tells him without a word that she values her peace more than being right, more than being loud, more than being validated in the moment. That kind of inner peace creates safety, and safety isn't boring. It's rare. It's attractive because it allows space for true connection to flourish. The woman who practices restraint also gives her partner the space to step up. By not filling every silence or solving every problem immediately, she invites him into leadership, into contribution, into reflection. She doesn't dominate or control, she invites. That invitation, rooted in respect rather than anxiety, creates a different kind of intimacy. One based on trust and freedom, or not on pressure and performance. But restraint doesn't mean distance. It doesn't mean coldness. In fact, it means she's in full command of her emotions, not ruled by them. And when she chooses to speak, to open up, or to lean in, it means something. Because it's not just another reaction, it's a conscious decision. That's the beauty of mature restraint. It adds weight to her presence and intention to her words. This isn't about silence, it's about power. The kind of power that doesn't need to prove anything to be seen. And in a world that moves fast, where everyone's trying to be louder than the next, the woman who can hold her ground in stillness, who can offer quiet strength in a moment of noise, that woman becomes unforgettable. So the next time you're tempted to fill the space, to answer immediately, to defend your emotions before they've settled, pause. There is profound dignity in choosing presence over reaction. And in that pause, you create the space not only for deeper understanding, but for genuine connection to take root. One of the most profound ways a mature woman keeps a man deeply intrigued, without ever uttering a word, is through the art of self-respect. Not the performative kind that's tied to status or appearance, but the quiet, consistent self-regard that shapes how she walks, how she chooses her relationships, and how she responds to both praise and criticism. It's not loud, it doesn't demand validation, but it is unmistakable. A woman who respects her sets the emotional tone of every room she enters. She does not beg to be chosen, nor does she compete for attention. Why? Because she already knows her worth. That deep sense of value comes from experience, from years of reflection, disappointment, growth, and healing. And it radiates in the way she holds her boundaries, the way she makes eye contact, the way she knows when to walk away, not to punish, but to preserve what she has built within herself. This level of self-respect is not about arrogance or ego. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's rooted in humility, the humility to understand that she is responsible for how she allows others to treat her. And so she's careful, intentional. She doesn't tolerate disrespect, not because she wants to teach someone a lesson, but because she has standards for her own peace. That's the kind of woman who naturally draws respect, not because she asks for it, but because she embodies it. Men sense this immediately. A woman who is grounded in self-respect becomes the mirror in which a man sees how he's showing up. Not because she judges him, but because her energy demands a certain caliber of presence. She doesn't need him to complete her. She does not desperate for his affection, but she's open, receptive if he shows up with integrity. That balance between openness and standards creates a powerful dynamic, one where desire isn't based on needness, but on mutual admiration. And let's be honest, it's rare. In a culture that often encourages women to shift, to people please, to tolerate in the name of being nice, the woman who respects herself enough to be selective becomes magnetic. She doesn't chase. She doesn't settle. She doesn't confuse attention with affection. And that kind of clarity, unspoken but deeply felt, creates space for something real to develop. Self-respect also shows up in how she treats herself, in her posture, in her habits, and how she prioritizes rest, growth, and joy. Because when a woman tends to her inner world, it shows. It changes the energy around her. People respond differently. Men especially feel the gravity of that self-assurance. It makes them want to rise. Not to win her over, but to be worthy of standing beside her. So let this be the takeaway. The deepest attraction begins with the energy you hold when no one is watching. Respect yourself so deeply that silence becomes your filter, boundaries become your language, and peace becomes your presence. Because the most unforgettable women don't demand attention. They simply embody value. There's a certain kind of woman who captivates a man, not by what she says, but by how she moves through the world, and perhaps most powerfully, by the way she protects her emotional energy. A mature woman who is unforgettable doesn't give everyone access to her inner world, not out of fear, not because she's guarded, because she understands the value of her peace, and she's learned, often the hard way, that not everyone is entitled to witness her softness, her vulnerability, or her strength. This kind of restraint isn't about being closed off at discernment. She's not withholding out of bitterness. She's preserving. Think about that. Preserving. She knows her emotional energy is a limited resource. And just like you wouldn't pour expensive perfume into a broken bottle, she no longer wastes her heart on connections that leak, drain, or take without giving. A woman like this doesn't chase chaos. She doesn't argue to be understood. She's learned the sacred art of pulling back when the energy is off, of walking away quietly when respect is absent. And that silence, that composure is louder than any reaction. It communicates volumes. It tells a man that she's tuned into her intuition, and that no performance, no charm, no false promises can override her internal compass. That's deeply attractive, because a woman who protects her energy is a woman who has done the work. She's not living out old wounds or needing someone to validate her. She's centered, grounded, and men feel that. They sense that she's not available for drama. She's not available for inconsistent behavior. She's not available for emotional volatility masked as passion. What she is available for is presence, peace, connection with depth. And that forces a man to meet her on a higher plane or miss out, not because she's trying to manipulate or control, but because she honors herself too much to let her life become a stage for someone else's confusion. You see, it's not just what she says no to. It's the way she says yes, slowly, intentionally. She gives her time, her affection, and her presence in measured, meaningful ways. That's why when she does to share space with someone, it means something. It carries weight. She's not just available, she's invested. But only when the energy is right, when the connection is mutual, and when the relationship respects the balance she's worked so hard to build. And here's the truth: protecting your energy doesn't make you less feminine. It makes you powerful, because the woman who chooses peace over approval, presence over performance, and purpose over popularity, she becomes unforgettable. She teaches others how to treat her, not with words, but with the boundaries she holds and the peace she refuses to sacrifice. So if you want to keep a man's attention, not just momentarily, but deeply, enduringly, don't hand over your energy freely. Guard it with grace. Let your stillness speak louder than noise. Let your peace become your presence. Because when a woman protects her energy, she doesn't need to speak loudly. Her life speaks for her.